Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we are talking about your most important skill and tool within your tool belt, the ability to listen. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Hey leaders, I'm your coach Adam, here to have an honest talk about leadership, the obstacles you might face, and how to refine your leadership skills to help you become the leader I know you are. So let's grab a drink, sit back, relax, and have a chat. If I were to ask you what the most important skill a leader can have, what would you say? Would you say time management? Would you say prioritization? Would you say conflict management? What if I told you the most important skill that you could have is the ability to listen? Would you believe me? Most don't. And those that do tend not to understand the power of listening and how to use it effectively. It's always interesting. When a team member comes to your office looking for you to solve a problem, the first thing you need to do is listen. In fact, if you just listen to the team member, they're more often going to solve their own problem. When you're in a hard conversation with somebody or a difficult conversation, the first thing you must do is listen to them. And by listening to them, you can figure out where you need to go. If you're interviewing somebody and you're trying to figure out if they are the right fit for the job, you need to listen. If you are in a room full of professionals, getting ideas from everybody on where you should go, a brainstorming session, as you will, the most important skill is the ability to listen. And if you can master the art, really, of listening, then you can make an effective judgment of where you should go and where you need to carry your team. But it's a real shame, because what I tend to find is most people listen on a very basic level, and they don't listen deeply or intently, and so they tend to get very surface level answers. They get surface level solutions, which in the short term, is fine, but long term can wreak havoc within your organization because you're not actually getting to the root of the problem. You're not getting at the true issue at hand. And so today, let's talk a little bit more about listening. And to start, we're going to talk about the 3 levels of listening. The first level is generally where the majority of people sit at. It is a level 1 listening. Level 1 is all about you. Well, I guess I should say me. It's about me. What do I think? What do I feel? How does this conversation have any bearing on my life? What kind of emotion am I feeling when you say those words to me? How do I think this is going to affect my life? It is all about me. It's not about the other person. It's about me. You've experienced these kinds of conversations before. In fact, I guarantee you've been a part of them. Hell, I was recently a part of one of these conversations where I was chit-chatting with a young woman in regards with vacation spots. She had openly asked me, "Where would you like to go vacationing?" I simply said, "Oh, I'd love to go vacation in North Korea." The first thing that came out of her mouth was, "How could you go to North Korea? That place is dangerous. That place you might not come back from." And I simply said, "I appreciate that, but think of the culture and think of the interesting things you could see. It's a hermit nation after all." To which she had kindly stated, "Yeah, but it wouldn't be really worth it." If we take a step back and look at the conversation objectively, she wanted to talk about vacation spots. So I obliged. But when I said I wanted to go to North Korea, her immediate knee-jerk reaction was, I would never go to North Korea because I wouldn't feel safe. So why the hell would you go? When I said it was about the culture, when I said that it's quite interestingly a hermit nation, like, let's be honest, there's nothing like it before, her reaction was, it isn't worth it to me. I would never go there. And she's very clearly listening at a level 1 listening. It's all about me. It's all about what I feel in this instance. And if we are going to be effective leaders, we need to hop out of level 1. Another example of level 1 listening is a leader hopping into a call and saying, I only have an hour to talk, so let's start working. Throughout the call, things might get discussed, things might be debated, but throughout the call, the leader continuously express, I appreciate that, but being conscientious of time, I can understand that, but we only have about 15 minutes left, What's actually happening? What's actually being said? On one hand, yes, it's important to be a timekeeper, to understand that there are limits to your meetings. On the other hand, though, we are very clearly listening at that level 1 listening. I only have so much time, and I need to be on time for my next meeting. I need to make sure this ends. I am actually not occupied with this meeting. I'm more interested in the next meeting. They're not even really present for that meeting. The argument could be made that that meeting probably shouldn't happen. Because again, they're listening at level 1. So if we don't want to be at a level 1, where do we want to be? Well, we want to be at a level 2 or level 3 listening. Level 2 listening is all about them. What do they think? How do they feel about it? What do they want out of this? It's all about them. It's not about us. Not about me. It's about them. An example of this is when I had an employee come to my office and she was in absolute tears. She was bawling her eyes out, saying that another coworker had badmouthed her, that was gossiping to the other employees. I listened. I listened very clearly at a level 2 and was asking her questions like, well, what would you like done? How are you feeling right now? What would make this right for you? It's not about me. This is about them. And as this is about them, this is about what they want. And so my question came up as I was talking with her, and I simply stated to her, I'm going to have to go out there and approach these women. How would you like me to bring this conversation up with them? What would be the easiest way for you? Would you like to be there? Would you like me to approach them alone? And this is really allowing the other party to drive the conversation, to figure out what's best for them, how to solve their own problems, and help move them forward, as opposed to me sitting there thinking, shit, this is another issue that I have to work on. What's going to be easiest for me? How should I handle this conversation? How should I move this issue forward? That's not what we want. If we're listening, it's about them. It's about what they want. Another really fabulous example of level 2 listening at work is during meetings. I cannot tell you how awesome it is to see a leader truly listen at meetings. When an issue is brought up, when somebody stands up and says, I don't like how these things are being done at this place. The leader's job is not to say, well, I don't care. It's not to say, I'm not interested. It's the job of the leader to take a step back and think about, well, what would they like instead? What would be a better solution? Why don't they like how things are being handled? Who is it affecting in their eyes? think about it from a level 2 listening style. It's all about them. They brought up the issue. Why is this an issue to them? What do they think could remedy the issue? And through sitting down with a level 2 listening, they're going to be able to answer all these questions for you. They're going to be able to answer why this is a problem, who it affects, potential solutions. All your job to do, if you're doing your job effectively, is to either say, no, I appreciate you bringing this forward, but this isn't a concern at this time, or it's to make the right decision on how to move the conversation forward. That's it. You're not expected to come up with all the solutions to these issues. Far from it. You have a team. That's their job. But as fun and as exciting as level 2 listening is, we really want to move into our third level of listening, which is much more of a global listening. It is what is not being said. And I know what you're thinking. Well, isn't that just nonverbal? Yes, but it goes far beyond nonverbal. An example of this is I actually was out looking at a gym. I went up to the gentleman at the front desk, and his name was Timothy. And I greeted him, and I asked him to take me a tour around his gym. And Timothy is talking about how amazing this gym is, how wondrous the facilities are, how amazing the group members are. They're talking about how awesome the staff is. But I don't really care about that. Sure, I'm listening to him, and I'm trying to stay at that level too. But what I'm more interested in is what's not being said. As I'm looking over the gym floor, I'm interested in who's working out. Oh, there are women working out. That's interesting. More importantly, there are women working out that are by themselves. Why? Clearly, this gym is safe enough that women feel safe enough to work out there, and they feel safe enough to work out by themselves. As I'm touring the facility, I run my hands on the top of some of the exercise equipment. Why? I'm looking for dust. Do they care about their equipment? Do they care about the status of their gym? When I go into the locker room, I intentionally look at the showers. I look at the tiles. I look at the walls. I'm looking for calcium buildup. Why? I'm looking for what's not being said. And if I'm seeing calcium buildup, if I'm seeing slime on the floors, if I'm seeing the walls having holes in them, what's not being said is that they don't care about this gym. This gym is just a cash machine to churn out money. And this is not the gym for me. And what's interesting is if you're listening at that level 3 listening, then it actually doesn't matter what the other person is saying. For example, Tim could be blowing smoke up my ass, telling me how amazing this gym is. But if I'm running my fingers across some of this gym equipment and I notice that there's a thick layer of dust, that's interesting. I walk over to the weight rack. I notice the weights are missing. Why? Because the gym patrons don't care and the staff don't care to replace them. So again, he can be telling me how amazing this gym is, but these little things tell me a very different story. And that's where we want to be. At that firm level 3 listening, because that's going to give us a much better picture of what's going on. Where is the man behind the curtain? Another example of this, and to bring this more into difficult and hard conversations, I had a gentleman that I was working with ages ago who was suicidal. And he didn't tell me he was suicidal. If I was sitting at a level 1 listening, I probably would never have figured it out. But as I'm sitting there at level 2 and moving into a level 3 of talking with him, I'm noticing these long, drawn-out pauses. He says things like, yeah, I could do that, but what's the point? He said something to me along the lines of, yeah, it'll just be over, so like, whatever. What's not being said here? Why do these things not matter to him? Why are there these long, drawn-out pauses in the conversation? I noticed he wasn't making eye contact with me. He had bags under his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping. He was disheveled. He had body odor. He wasn't taking care of himself. And he looked generally unkempt. At that point, I asked him very poignantly, and we'll call him Doug. I said, Doug, are you planning to kill yourself? And he said, yes. And he looked down. I would never have caught that if I was thinking about myself and how I feel about that conversation. I would never have caught the breaks and the pauses in between. I would never have picked up the clues that this man was struggling with depression and needed help. But because I was sitting at that level 3, because I was constantly thinking, what's not being said here? Why is he having those pauses? Why does he look the way that he does? Why is he not meeting my gaze? Why are there these gaps of silence in between these sentences? Why are you saying the things that you're saying? Because I was listening at that level 3, in that what's not being said, I could figure out something was not right here. And it was my job to figure out if this was something serious or not. And so I hopped in and asked a question that would confirm my suspicions on if this individual was planning to hurt themselves or not. So to kind of go back, most people listen at a level 1, and that's fine. But we as leaders need to be listening at a level 2. It's all about them. What do they think? How do they feel? What do they want? But ultimately, we always want to push into a level 3 and start thinking about what is not being said. If you're at a conference that you're running with your team sitting around you and you're asking for ideas, thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and all there is crickets, it is time to wake up and start listening at a level 3 listening. What is not being said in that circle? Why is there nothing but crickets? What is going on? That being said, I'll be honest with you. Oftentimes, we can't continuously listen at a level 3 listening style. We typically fall into from 3 to 2 to 1, back up to 2, back up to 3, sometimes sitting at a 3 for a while, then down to a 2. And it's a bit of a juggling act. We will always have to strive to sit at least at a level 2 listening. And how we do that is we start asking questions that promote curiosity from us into them. And what I mean by that is stop asking closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are simply a yes or a no. These are questions that you need to ask when you're looking for confirmation. Are you planning to kill yourself? Yes or no? Can you fill the shift tonight? Yes or no? Closed-ended questions have their place, but they don't promote level 2 listening. Level 2 listening comes from asking open-ended questions. Start asking questions that start with who, what, why, where, and how. Those are the 5 key words to having an open-ended question. Who is this going to affect? What do you want? Where do you want to go with this? Why is this important? How do you believe we can fix this? If you can start your questions with any one of those 5 words, you're right on track to answering open-ended questions. Then the next step to staying at that level 2 listening is to start reflecting back what the other person is saying. And this is much harder than it sounds. I've personally built up a career around reflecting, and it sounds easy, but it's very hard to do. And a reflection is essentially summarizing what the individual is saying in 1, 2, 3 words. So an example of this would be, Adam, life is just really hard right now. My girlfriend is on me. She's always telling me that I'm lazy, that I'm a good for nothing. Then my parents have been after me because I'm not going to school at the moment. And then on top of that, I have work breathing down my neck. They just won't let off. And then rent's coming up. I just don't know where to start on any of this stuff. I have so many bills that my finances are in a crunch. And so a simple reflection is, you have a lot going on. The whole goal of a reflection is to be short and sweet, to tell the other party that you're listening and to promote them to continue the conversation. We want them to keep talking. Because at the end of the day, if they're talking, we're listening. And so let's wrap all this up as we're coming to the end of our time together. As leaders, the most important tool within our tool belt is the ability to listen. There are 3 listening styles. The first level is all about us. The second is all about them. How do they feel? What do they want? We always want to start at a level 2 listening, but we want to move into a level 3 listening style, which is what is not being said. Why does this person present the way that they do? Why is there a pause at this point? Why are they choosing these words? Why is nobody speaking up? Level 3 is where we always want to sit. And to kind of help push us from a level 1 into a level 2 listening, our first step is start asking open-ended questions. Those start with who, what, where, when, and why. Ask those open-ended questions constantly. And then on top of that, we always want to start summarizing back what the other person is saying in very short, brief sentences, because we want to promote them to talk. We don't want us to be talking over them, because if we're talking, we're not listening. And again, if we're listening effectively, then the other party is going to solve all their own problems. And so with that, we're going to end today's podcast episode. I hope you learned something, and I shall see you guys in the next episode. Cheers. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with a friend. And if you're ready to take the next leap and improve your leadership skills, head over to www.seedingthelead.com and book your free coaching session today. It is always interesting when you just stop and listen. So it is currently 2:00 in the morning and I am editing this podcast, listening to myself talk. And every single time I'm like, shit. I'm clearly using that word way too much and it's my filler word. I need to fix that. Next episode, I'm going to do better. Promise.